My name is Kundan. This is an author interview with my guest, Dr. Varun Gandhi, who has written 4 children's books. So if you're parents, you're welcome to come listen, either right now or the recording on YouTube as well. And yeah, so he's written 4 children's books, and I'm here to be in conversation with him. So welcome.
Thank you, Kundan. Thank you for having me.
All right. So let's go in order. You've written 4 books in 1 year. So what was the process like, and what inspired you to write each book and the book titles?
So I'll start off with the inspiration. I had a kid, and when he turned about 6 months to a year, I thought about what I wanted to teach him and what's out there and what's not. And so I already had certain books that was doing a great job of teaching him certain things, and so I wanted to fill in the gaps. And that's how I started with my first book about the Kite Festival. It's called Dancing with Kites. And in particular, it's about this festival called Uttarayan, which is celebrated in mid-January. And we essentially celebrate it by flying kites. And so you'll see in Gujarat, this state in India, that the sky will be filled with kites from 6 a.m. onwards.
Like colorful kites, like big ones, right?
And it's a whole party.
Yeah.
Kites, food, alcohol, I don't know. And they just have fun on the roof all day. They don't do it in parks, they do it at the top of their buildings.
Oh wow.
And it's gorgeous.
Right.
And so I wanted to write about that, capture that for kids. And so that's how I came up with this first book.
And you're Gujarati, right?
I am Gujarati as well. Yeah. And every year in LA I organize this festival.
Oh nice.
And so we usually have about 1,500 people that come out. 300-400 kites in the air.
That's great. And you have a 2-year-old kid, right?
Yeah, he's almost 2.5 now.
Yeah, a boy.
A boy, yeah. Yeah, and I've always been interested in sharing these kinds of ideas and topics with him. And so the second book that I published was actually in conjunction with a friend. His name is Earth, and he wanted to teach something to his daughter. I said, let's team up and do something together.
Right.
And so he picked the topic of empathy.
Oh.
And that's how we came up with the second book called it's called Little Acts, Big Hearts, How Kids Can Practice Empathy. It's a story of a young girl and a dog, and how the dog shows empathy naturally and how the girl learns from the dog.
Right.
And that's the story.
And then the third one.
And then the third one, for a couple of years during the pandemic, we put together a food kitchen, helping prepare hot meals for the community, especially the homeless community.
Oh yeah, I donated that.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And so through the whole journey, we put together about 320,000 meals over 3 years. And this is kind of the story of that. It's a story of service and how do you give back to your community.
Right.
And so in Sanskrit, it's called seva. So how can you provide seva to the people that live around you?
Okay.
And so the whole book is about this kid who, in his town, they go through some challenges, food challenges, and how he puts together a food kitchen and serves hot meals to people who don't have anything.
Right. Yeah, and seva means service, right?
It's all about service. Yeah, and so that book is called Som's Spirit of Seva,
Right.
or Sam's Spirit of Service.
Yeah. And for those that's coming in, this is an author interview with Dr. Varun Gandhi, who has written 4 children's books, and he's talking about them. And yeah, seva is very important in my culture, our culture as well. So I'm Hindu and Buddhist and Sikh at the same time because I grew up in Myanmar. It used to be called Burma, and in Myanmar we have a very syncretic relationship with each other when it comes to the different indigenous religions that come from Hindu, Snatam Dharma, and they're all part of this Hindu pluralism anyways. And so I went to the Sikh temple every Sunday, and we, Seva is a big part of the Sikh community where we offer what's called langar, which is lunch for free for anybody who comes, like rich or poor or homeless or whatever. And we all cook together and eat together. And the whole point is to create community and have that sense of equality and justice as well. And going all the way back to our 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, who was the one who created Sikhism the way it is today. You know, there were Sikhs before that too, but he's the one who created all these different systems. So I'm really happy you wrote that.
Yeah, it's an important part of our culture, like you mentioned, and you're three of them. I'm the fourth one, Jain.
Yeah.
And we too believe that giving back to our community is extremely important, and we all show it in different forms. At the end of the day, that's what it is. It's giving back to the people, and we just had this opportunity. Get a call one day that we want to put this kitchen together, serve some people. The pandemic had just hit. And so while we coming up with ideas on what we could do, we found a team that could cook these meals for us. And that's kind of how it started, and we just kept going and going and going. We did it for 3 years. Now it's important. It's interesting that we're having this conversation today because we took about a 6-month break or 8-month break this year, and today was the first day back. We actually found a facility, and we started our first day back. So this morning at 6 a.m. I was out there cooking.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it's interesting that we're having this conversation right now about that. But yeah, super excited about that third book called Seva, and teaching kids how we can give back to our people around us.
Right, yeah.
And then the last book.
The last book, yes.
And the last book is about the Prime Minister of India. His name is Narendra Modi.
Right.
This book came about because I'd seen that he's done some amazing work to uplift people in India,
Right.
and I wanted to write about it because I feel like, especially in the Western culture, that he's given a bad light, and even Indians don't know certain things that he's done about it because Western media doesn't cover it. And that's why I wanted to put this book together.
Yeah, I didn't know he said he rescued 20,000 Indians from Ukraine during the war that's still happening. But somehow he was able to stop that war temporarily to get them out.
Yeah, he was get a ceasefire temporarily, pull out 22,000 out of Ukraine. Yeah, probably the only one who's done that.
And that's incredible. I didn't know that until I read that.
I mean, he's had a very positive influence
Right.
in the region.
Yeah.
He's done a lot of great things.
Mm. Yep. In that book, there's lessons, right, for each of his accomplishments. He also try to a lesson or a message for the kids.
Yeah, it's I wanted to tell a story. I knew that for each phase in his life, I wanted to bring out some kind of learning for the kids. Some positive message that his life could teach kids. And so in each phase of his life, I've highlighted something that I think is a great message that we can repeat to our kids. The more you repeat to it, the more you read the book to your kids, the more you repeat that message and the more it'll get ingrained in them. So I feel like starting early, even though the concepts in there might be at a higher level, but just starting on the kids early they'll gain something from it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Like I read this book to my kid every day, Dancing with Kites, and he's
To the 2-year-old kid.
to a 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old
Yeah,
kid,
2.5.
and he can now actually say the word consequences,
You can. Wow.
and so he'll repeat it back. Consequences. That's
That's
great.
another question I wanted to ask you because each of these books seem to be at different levels, especially the Modi book, which seems rather a little bit advanced. So, like, when you wrote these books, like, what are the age ranges that you have in mind for each of them? Or are they for the parents, like, to read to kids?
Both ways.
Okay.
And so it's also for the parents to read to the kids, and while they're reading, they're also ingraining these messages within them. So if a parent is not empathetic, then they can learn something from this book. Or it could instill the spirit of Seva within the parent as well.
Right.
Right? That's one. But also for older kids, especially some of these books have higher level words or concepts that maybe older kids could understand. They can read it themselves and gain a better understanding. So it can go from all the way, I would say even start off at a year old, all the way up until 10 years of age. And when you're 1 to 5, you're reading it to the child and explaining certain ideas and concepts. But when they get older, then they can start reading it themselves.
Right. Yeah. So I'm curious, like, what your journey to here has been, because you were an engineer, right? And you have a PhD in environmental engineering. Yeah. So how did you get from there to here? Like, because you're no longer doing that as a job, right?
Yeah. I think for a while I was stuck in the rat race, stuck in the mindset of that I have to achieve these checkboxes in life.
Right.
And so I went from degree to advanced degree to getting my PhD, to finding that stable job, that our parents want for us.
Right.
And then I had it for a couple of years and I realized that I'm not happy. I have everything, but I'm still not happy. And so there's something beyond what I was doing at the moment, and that's what that realization helped me kind of move past that job, the whole career. I left everything behind, and since then been exploring all kinds of things, but mainly to figure out what I'm interested in, and where my interests lie. So being creative is something that I really enjoy, and a lot of it has been in books, but now I'm also trying to bring it out in terms of bringing it out in front of a mic,
Right.
talking about it. But these are kind of behind the scenes kind of creativity.
Right. Yeah. So for those who don't know, we met at Toastmasters, right? Right here in close to Tustin and there.
Very close by.
Tustin and Annie Border. And there's kind of a Japanese spiritual center. That's why they hosted the Toastmasters, and you were giving speeches, and I was giving speeches and learning how to give effective speeches, and yeah, we kind of grew to like each other, and you invited me to be on your platform. What's Your Story, which is what you did before you made these books.
I'm actually going to bring it back.
Huh?
I'm going to bring it back. What's Your Story?
Oh, good. Yeah.
I want to interview more people, get back to it.
Right.
So I stopped when my kid was born.
Oh,
I actually
right.
had interviews lined up all the way up for the month of May 2022
Oh, wow.
and into June, and he was going to come out mid-June, but he decided to show up 3 weeks early, and so then I had to cancel all the interviews that I had lined up.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so since then I've kind of put it on a hiatus. But
Right.
I want to bring it back.
And these were live shows, right? Simultaneously cast on YouTube and Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And then, because YouTube is better for long form content than Instagram. And you did something cool with that where, in terms of marketing and sales, right? For those who want to learn about that, where the actual long form video was on YouTube after the live was over. And you would take these clips and post them on Instagram, these clips that were like kind of juicy clips, right? That were like highlights. Because that's what Instagram is like. The attention span is like less than that of a goldfish. So you put those clips on Instagram and then you directed them to the YouTube.
Yeah, that's what I did. Yeah, because I realized Instagram audience wasn't getting those long-form YouTube videos,
Right,
and so I figured ways to kind of deliver that content to them, at least the important bits and pieces.
right,
And so that's what I do. Yeah,
right.
I'm gonna bring all of that back in the works.
Yeah. And once your story started off as one-on-one interviews, and then you started doing panels with multiple people.
I did, multiple formats.
Yeah. And then you went back to one-on-one, right?
Different seasons and
Yeah.
different flavors.
Yeah.
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 I enjoyed both of it. I enjoyed the panel discussions as well. And I want to do more live, in-person events. Something like this. This is probably the beginning of it.
Yeah. And I think you brought me on twice, one for one-on-one about my journey from Myanmar, and then I was part of a panel on the cultural appropriation of yoga, and then I talked about Hinduphobia. You brought Sneha too for that topic, understanding Hinduphobia.
Yeah, those were some good discussions.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
much needed to happen.
Right. And it was like a variety of topics, right?
Yeah, we did mental health, men's abuse, women's abuse, cultural appropriation of yoga, Hinduphobia, a couple of others.
Right. So, let's get back to Modi, I guess, since you wrote a book about him, and he is a controversial figure. And, for example, you have on the cover of the book, let's see. You have several different pictures, and one of them is the Ram Mandir, which is, of course, controversial because the West doesn't know the whole story, and the big media houses don't tell the whole story, and then the smaller content creators, it's like a trickle-down effect, and then, they end up spreading that misinformation, right? They were claiming that it was built on top of we had the big opening ceremony in January, so it was built on top of a destroyed mosque, right? What most people don't know is that the mosque was built on top of a destroyed major Hindu temple at Ram Mandir. And not only that, the Indian Supreme Court, hired archaeologists to do the archaeological survey to confirm all of that. And on top of that, not only did they allow Hindus to build a temple, they actually gave Muslims 5 acres of land, just a few kilometers from that place to build their mosque, where they're building the world's largest Quran.
Yeah, no, they did more than enough
Yeah,
to appease, in a way,
right,
a section of society when they probably didn't have to do all of that,
right,
right?
yeah,
And this is the person who is running the Archaeological Survey of India, which is the organization that ran the surveys, was also Muslim,
right,
K.K. Muhammad,
Yeah.
and he put together all of the proof to show that this used to be a Hindu temple if you go years back. And so what Western media showed was just part of the story,
right,
and they eliminated things that went, I don't know, 400 or 500 years before,
Right.
right? So only covered the last 300-400 years of history.
right,
What about the rest?
exactly,
There's much longer time before that than 300 years.
exactly. Yeah, this is what I call the life erasing. Yeah.
It is. And I think it's high time that people know these facts about what's been going on.
Right.
You only hear one-sided story that he's against Muslims, where I've covered this in the book that he was the one who abolished triple talaq.
Right.
Which, do you want to share what that is?
Sure. For those who don't know, it means that the husband can divorce the wife, and a Muslim husband can divorce his Muslim wife just by saying talaq 3 times, which is like, I divorce you 3 times. And in modern times, he doesn't even have to say it in person, he can just send you a text, and that's divorce. Yeah.
So in a way, he's protecting women by abolishing that
Right.
law or the.
Yeah. Yeah. Because in India, under that so-called secular pro-minority laws, Muslims and Christians actually can operate under their own laws with their own courts. So basically, Muslims can operate totally under Sharia law, whereas Hindu temples, schools, hospitals, institutions are all completely under state control.
So a lot more restrictions,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yep. And that's also something most people don't know. That's why I've been collecting these funny videos and also not so funny videos about the life of Islam to educate people on how when you omit something, when you reveal something that's factual, but you don't reveal the other facts, you can weave a narrative that's completely the opposite of it. There's a funny video that I posted on my YouTube channel, and I'll post a link in the description too, where you see a video of a man who's being poured, alcohol, poured a drink, right, from the bottle into the glass, and the man is saying, no, 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 no. And you can see him going like this. He's like, poor guy, he doesn't want to drink. And this actor, he's facing peer pressure, right? But then the camera scope widens, right? And you see that there's nobody else. It's his own hand. That's funny. Okay.
Power of perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And also like the term grass-fed, right? I used to think, and a lot of people would have the same impression, right? I used to think grass-fed meant, this is the vision I had, where cows were eating grass on the fields of grass, and happily eating the grass freely, roaming freely. But no, grass-fed means they're still locked out in the factory farm, and they're literally being thrown pieces of grass through the big machines, and the grass is literally in the entire faces, and they have to eat like that. That's what grass-fed actually means. And it doesn't mean they're getting like only grass. Grass might be just a little bit, and they might be giving them soybeans for most of the time.
But because they've had grass.
Yeah, even if they feed grass a little bit, that's grass-fed. So if you actually want cows that, if you want to eat beef, that's like from cows that are growing on fields, eating fields, you have to look for the term pasture raised. Yeah. So look at the level of manipulation and deception there, right? Yeah.
And that's it's close to us.
Right.
Think about how much they're doing for things that are far away.
Right.
You don't hear much about it anyways.
Exactly. Yeah. Another controversy around Modi was his passing of a new law called CAA, or Citizenship Amendment Act, which, by the way, he was never able to actually implement until this year.
When did he pass it?
Like 5 years ago. So, again, going back to the lie formation, right? There are two lies told about that in the Western media. The first is not even a lie formation, it's a straight up lie, right? The first claim was that the law would revoke the citizenship of Muslims in India. Not true at all. It's a total lie. The second claim was that it fast tracks citizenship, even the path to citizenship of all refugees coming to India, except Muslims. And that is true. It's only for Hindus, Jain, Buddhists, and Sikh. In any other religious minorities, like people who are like into animism and things like that. But you have to look at the context, right? What countries are surrounding India? Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, and let's look at the population numbers first.
Which all used to be Hindu land.
Right, yeah, exactly. Indigenous land. In the 1970s in Afghanistan, there were 700,000 Hindus there. By 2021, there were only 400 left. So why?
And today?
Today, none. It's like some reports say there are 9 left. So they didn't even want even the 400 left. And when the Americans left, Taliban took over again, they kicked out everybody. And when they kicked out everybody, by the way, they were even raping the corpses of women. So they were desecrating even dead bodies. So, is this related to another Hindu-phobic claim that I want to set the record straight? So, if they're doing that in the 21st century, imagine how much worse it was when they had complete control of Hindu land for 800 years, right? Before the British came. Imagine how much worse it was. This is the real reason our Hindu women, especially the princesses and all her maids, committed what's known as sati or johar when they burned themselves up. And the Hindu-phobic narrative was, oh, this is all patriarchal and all that. No, they were protecting their dead bodies from desecration because they would not be allowed peace even after death. That's why they burned their bodies up.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? Yeah. And it was also their way of performing their own last rites on themselves, because Hindus burn out the dead anyways, right? So if an enemy conquers the whole city or the whole country, they kill everybody, including all the relatives, all the siblings, so there'll be nobody left to do the last rites. So it was like a double thing, double purpose. One, to prevent their bodies from desecrated. Two, to perform their own last rites on themselves. Yeah.
And now they're saying it's, what is it viewed as now, Sati?
But they don't do it anymore, right, because there's no need to do it anymore. But it's still being called patriarchal by the Western left, which, by the way, is not new. The British were also calling it patriarchal, and in fact, they were inflating the numbers of how much sati was actually committed, even back in the day. And they did it to convert Hindus into Christianity by saying, look at these patriarchal savages. We're going to save Hindu women from these patriarchal Hindu men.
So just by controlling the narrative, they were able to switch.
Yeah. Right. And in Pakistan, when independence happened in 1947, 48, right? And there was a partition of India into India and Pakistan. Uh, what was then West Pakistan, right now it's just Pakistan. 30% of the population was Hindu. Today it's only about, reports vary between like 1.6% to 3%. Again, why? Because of genocide. Even to this day, right, they're raping women there, trafficking them, kidnapping them, forcefully converting them. In addition to all of that, Hindus cannot even marry each other in Pakistan. Except in this one province where they changed the law just 3 years ago. But even that law had a clause that said that even if they're allowed to marry, if one of them converts to Islam, then the marriage is annulled. Yeah. Similar law exists in Malaysia, where if a Hindu husband converts to Islam, he can just kidnap their kids and take full custody, and the wife can do nothing about it unless she took converts to Islam. Bangladesh, for decades, had their Hindu, the Enemy Property Act, which meant that the government can just confiscate Hindu property and just take it and give it to a Muslim, or they can just keep it for themselves. And it was only in 2011 when the recently ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina went to flee the country because of the coup. She passed a law called the Hindu Property Restoration Act, giving back the property to Hindus. So it was the first time indigenous people who are indigenous to that land achieved land back. That's literally like the first successful land back. Yeah, and that's the real reason why she was ousted in a coup. The other narratives are kind of true, but I guess that is alive only some truth, right? The narrative in the West is that some student protesters were angry about a different law that said that the descendants of those who fought in that war of liberation from West Pakistan, because it was East Pakistan, that they get priority admission to universities. Kind of like an affirmative action here, and that they were angry about that. They were probably angry about that too, but they were more angry about Hindus getting their land back. Exactly. And after she was ousted, Hindus' properties are getting burnt out, Hindu women are getting raped, all of these are happening.
They can't celebrate the festivals.
They can't celebrate festivals, exactly. And who are the people doing that? The Islamic supremacist colonizers. Because they are colonizers, let's be clear about it. They're imperialists, they're not indigenous to those lands. So this is why that exception was there in that law, CAA. This is what's happening to Hindus in these countries. And so to not make that exception would be like to allow the abuser to follow the abuse into another country. It's like imperialism is a macro version of a domestic violence situation. So like if a husband was abusing the wife and the wife ran away to a shelter, how ridiculous would it be if the shelter allowed the husband to follow her and live at the shelter too? Right? Yeah.
That's what's happening.
That's apparently what these Western social justice warriors want. Right? They want the abuser to follow them, all in the name of social justice. When in reality, either they don't know the whole picture or they don't care. I think half the people and the people who don't care were just social signaling hypocrites. The other people are more like naive people who just don't know better. And
Just following their.
right. And so when I'm speaking about all this, I'm speaking to that second group. naive, some people would call them youthful idiots. But yeah, that's setting the record straight on that, so people understand like he's not the monster, and on top of that, like his reputation as a so-called internationalist allows him to get away with passing the photographs if he actually wanted to. And I heard recently at some of the kind of verified that he kind of did pass a new xenophobic caste bill called the Caste Atrocities Bill. And you don't hear that in the news at all in the West, right? Because that destroys the narrative that he's internationalist, right? And the law basically says that if I give you even a wrong look or stare at you the wrong way, that's a class atrocity and not to be arrested for that. It's very similar. I think that was like a few months ago. It's very similar to the law that California tried to pass, and maybe a little bit worse.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah. And the law in California that Governor Newsom vetoed, that law was also very extreme and ridiculous because they didn't even define the word caste properly. So that meant that if you're taller than me, I can claim that you are for a higher caste, and I can sue you for that. Right? It would have become anybody can sue anybody for anything kind of law.
Because you're different.
Right. And even though they say it's anti-caste, it would have ironically recreated the caste system and actually codified it into law for the first time in American soil. Exactly what the British did. The British colonizers did.
What did the British colonizers do? Let's talk about that.
They created the caste system. Not Hindus, they did. And they created the caste system based on the Portuguese and the Spanish caste system. But in India it was worse because they kidnapped our rishis, pandits, and gurus, basically our teachers. And they went house to house of our teachers. And at gunpoint, they robbed them of our books, of our spiritual textbooks, especially the Manuscript, which by the way is the reason why today nobody can read the actual Manuscript in the original Sanskrit. Only very, very few people can read it from the hands of a very few guides or gurus that live in underground. And even to get to them, even if you were to meet them, you would have to show credentials that you're legit, that you're sincere. But anyways, back in the day, they took those books and basically rewrote them and mistranslated them in order to make it look like caste system. We've never had a caste system. We did have Varna and Jati, which not caste. Do you know what Varna and Jati is?
I've read about it, but
Okay.
definitely talk about it.
Okay, so Varna, first of all, Varna was never a ground reality. It was a philosophical system. And it wasn't hierarchical, and it wasn't by birth. It was horizontal, which meant anybody can change their Varna from one to the other. And there's been many historical records of people doing that. Like I think Valmiki was a fisherman who became a robber and then became a rishi, right? So
Varna is basically a profession.
it's basically like a profession, but at a very high level, right? So there are four high level categories. So there is the ruler category, which is also kind of like a warrior, the Kshatriya category. There was the Brahman who are the teachers. There was Vaishnava,
The traders.
the traders, yeah. And then there was the Shudra who were like the cleaners, people who clean out houses, like sanitation workers. And yeah, so you could change those. If you like just took the training, learned the skills, you can just change your partner. Like today, like you're an engineer, now you're an author, right? So same thing. It's
I'm a live example.
right. So you change your partner, right? And then there was jati. Jati was ground reality, but again, it wasn't hierarchical. It was just a way to, like, in a very loose way, you could call them like unions. And we have job unions here in the United States. It's kind of like that, but more organized around like religion and spirituality, right? There were entire tribes who were a particular jati. And when the British did,
What's an example of a jati? Where
I'm not sure, like, it's almost like a group version of the individual professions that I told you about, right? So like there's a jati for every like, profession basically. Right? They're like kind of like unions back in the day, in a way.
it's like organizations
Right,
or
yeah.
legal organizations
Right,
and engineering
yeah,
space.
right, yeah. And they were, but they also kind of like lived in the same village. So there were like entire villages of people who had the same profession basically.
Some of them also have last names that are their
Right,
profession.
exactly.
Like a tailor or
Right, because they all did the same thing. Yeah. So it was a way to organize society in that way. And what the British did was, besides mistranslating the text to make it look like it's a Hindu idea, they also criminalized entire jatis and created a literal criminal caste. So like when a group of people is so traumatized, right, by this massive invasion and colonialism, when they did the most cruel things like cutting off the thumbs of our weavers, like that's another thing they did, the British, right? And they engineered 25 famines, right? Altogether, the British Christian colonizers killed 1 billion Hindus, 1 billion Indians, including Hindus. And that doesn't even include their bullets. That's just from their policies alone, and all their famines they engineered. So when they're so traumatized and you criminalize certain groups, then naturally other groups get so afraid of hanging out with people who are now literal criminals. Hence, it's one of the ways they became untouchables. Yeah.
now there's a whole movement behind tearing this whole system down
Right.
from the minds of people.
Exactly. So the key is to decolonize because even some Hindus don't know what I just told you. They also think it's a Hindu thing because they've been brainwashed for so long. By the way, the caste system is actually illegal in India. It's outlawed. And it's outlawed since independence. Doesn't matter, then people don't know. However, socially, it still exists because, again, because people have been brainwashed by the British to believe that it's their own, in their own culture, which was the whole point, because it's easy to conquer a group of people. It's not so easy to rule. And you cannot keep shooting people. That's why you need to do mind control as well. And that's essentially what they did, mind control.
Control to thought.
Huh?
Control to your thoughts
Right.
and ideas.
Exactly. Because you would only accept a system if you believe it's your own idea, which is essentially what they did by mistranslating all of these texts.
It's taking so many years of undoing.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, because it's illegal, that was one of the reasons why Modi's opposition leader, Rahul Gandhi, who is the daughter of Sonia Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi, son of Sonia Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi, he was temporarily barred by the Supreme Court from holding office. Did you know about that?
I did hear about that.
You know why? He tweeted a caste slur against Modi. He said everyone with the Modi last name is a thief. Which in India is illegal to do that. It's a caste slur. Yes.
This was just recently.
This is recent,
Right
like,
before the election.
just like 18 months ago. Yeah. And that's not a thing most people don't know. And this is the guy that the Western powers want to do regime change with and replace Modi with that guy. The one who is also that he's half white. Since his mother's white. Yeah. So that's the irony, right?
I'm even wondering if their last name is Gandhi.
Right? Yeah. And by the way, for about 20 years, his white mom, Sonia Gandhi, was the leader of Congress. He's not African. So it's a literal white supremacist party, basically, when you consider that. And now he's the leader.
He's was one of the candidates for
Right.
the highest cost in the country.
Yeah. Yeah. That's Rahul Gandhi. So yeah, I want to do something like this. So this one.
Here we go, here we go, here we go.
I think that was very important. We need to talk about that.
Right.
It's one of the reasons I wrote a book about him as well.
Right.
Because I think there's a lot that he's done that you don't get to hear because of all the false narratives.
Right. Exactly.
And it's like once you have a particular view of him, you're not open to anything else. Even though he's done good in the country.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so it's like, what message do you have for people, like, overall, like, from reading these books? And what do you want, like, basically what do you want children to grow up with?
I think a set of values, something that you can pick up from other people's lives, or ideas like empathy and seva, that you could also implement in your life. Right? So parents from an early age can expose their kids to these ideas, and then they could implement empathy in their life from an early age. They can implement seva and find ways to give back to the community that's around you. Talking about the Modi book, it's about his contribution to people and how kids can learn from his life as far as the different messages for each page. Certain things that he's done and he's really good at that kids can learn from. So I wanted to pull those little messages out and give it to the kids. And then, festivals, so learn more about our culture, festivals, why we celebrate it, and how we celebrate it, and encouraging kids to celebrate it. That's the end goal, is to pass on these ideas to our next generations. And so I found this is an easy way to do it, because I know my kid loves reading. Every night, at least 45 minutes of books. Right? And bring 20 books on the bed, and they'll go through all of that. And so I think it's an easy way for kids to start early, to instill these ideas in them. Yeah. So I have other books in the works as well, looking at other concepts like ahimsa, nonviolence, or different people. Like Chhatrapati Shivaji was an important ruler in Maharashtra, and he was fighting against Aurangzeb
Right.
right around that time.
For those who don't know, Aurangzeb is like the Hitler Islam against indigenous Hindus. Actually, much worse. Right? He's more like King Leopold. Yeah, who was
A lot of death and rape and all that.
yeah.
Yeah, so keep working on new ideas. I think I published all these four within a year, about 6 months. The next couple will take a little bit longer, slowing down.
And they're going to be children's books too.
Children's books.
Yeah, let's talk about the hymn song too, because a lot of Westerners have a very skewed understanding of that, right? Yes. They often use it to like engage in like spiritual bypassing, right? And be like, oh, we're going to be non-violent and we cannot criticize anybody and we cannot fight against anybody even if they're like cruel or whatever. And it's not that at all, right? This is also why like Gandhi is celebrated in the West instead of Bhagat Singh, right? Or Chandra Bose, right? Because they want people to be docile. Even though, by the way, Gandhi was a colonial stooge. If he actually believed in ahimsa, India would have received independence like years before 1947 or 48. Because he asked all the poor people to be non-violent and to do civil disobedience, to strike. But he never asked the Indian Army and the Indian Navy, who were the one helping the British commit the atrocities and keep helping the British rule. The British couldn't have ruled by themselves, they were a minority. They used the Indian Army itself to do it. And in fact, when the Indian Navy, when they were at sea, did do a strike, civil disobedience, right, which is exactly what Gandhi was apparently standing up for, he sent Sardar Patel to stop it. And he stopped it before it could get to the news could get to the Indian Army. Because if the news got there, it would be done. The British could no longer rule India. So that's another life or mission that people can also Gandhi.
No.
So for us Hindu, it's like that statement, do no harm but take mercy. So we believe in non-violence, but it's more that we believe violence is the very, very last resort. A very famous example of that is in the Mahabharata, right? Which is one of our two famous itihas or historical texts that some say it's mythology, but I don't think so. I think it's based on facts and history. There may have been a lot of flowery, exaggerations maybe, but most of it is history. So in the Mahabharata, in a rigged gambling match, which by the way is also a lesson against gambling, and gambling is bad. In a rigged gambling match, these 5 brothers who were the rightful heirs to the kingdom ended up losing their half of the kingdom, right? And there's also a scene of injustice when the queen there was an attempt to strip her naked in front of everybody, and Krishna saved her from doing that with his miracle power, right? So there's an actual injustice that happened to, in addition to losing the land, right? And then they were exiled for 14 years, right? It's just like a summary of the story. But anyway, so after the 14 years, they sent several investors to get the land back, right? The group just fought a war, and they had every right to and every reason to. And Krishna was like, that would mean a lot of lives would be lost, a lot of people would be killed unnecessarily. So let's try to have a peace treaty first, right? So first they sent one ambassador and they made fun of him and kicked him out. Then they sent Krishna himself. And they still didn't want to get the land back. So Krishna said, finally, like, just give 5 villages back. 1 village for each of the 5 brothers. And the usurpers, right, the person who had stolen the land, they still didn't even want to give the 5 villages back. So they tried like 2 or 3 times for peace, even willing to give up the entire land and get only 5 villages back. That's how much Krishna tried for peace, right? And they said no. So finally, that's why the Mahabharata war was fought. So it doesn't mean they were not violent. It was more that violence is the very, very last resort.
I think even this day,
Right.
India preaches
Yeah.
the same thing.
Exactly.
You see in the diplomacy, they do the same thing.
Exactly. That's why the Indian Supreme Court gave 5 acres of land to Muslims, near that Ram Mandir. Because we believe that. Yeah.
And that's why even
No.
the terrorist, Ajmal Kasab, the
Right.
worst terrorist attack, he even got a trial,
Right.
even though everyone knew he was guilty, but he still had the chance to prove himself innocent.
Right.
And then the court gave a verdict, and then justice was given.
Right. Exactly. Let me see what's here. Huh? 356. Oh, okay. We're kind of right on time. Yeah, usually these are like 1 hour, 90 minutes. So I think 1 hour might be enough time. Huh? Yeah. And so yeah, I'm glad we got to discuss it as well.
Thank you for having me, man. I really
Yeah.
appreciate sharing my story, bringing these books out to the world. So the Dancing with Kites book has already been published, and it's available for sale. The other 3 are still in pre-publication. These are just a couple samples that I've received, but hopefully they'll be out soon.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So like, what's next for you?
Sorry?
What's next for you?
What's next? I working on a couple books, and next year I want to put together an event for called the Gujarati Unity Festival. We had done one version of it before the pandemic hit, and I want to bring it back and organize that convention again. So working on that, figuring out location and dates and all that. And once that's there, then we'll officially announce it. That's in the back burner. I do want to get that going in this next month or so.
Right, yeah.
I'm also planning the Uttarayan Festival in January 2025. So most likely January 19th, 2025. And still figuring out the location,
Excellent. Yeah,
but that's coming up as well.
yeah. Yeah, I hope to do, as for me, I hope to do more author interviews like this, especially focusing on pro-Hindu people like you as well. And yeah, speaking of which, I want to talk about 2 projects I'll be doing. I have a book club on the 27th on the book, The Blood Telegram, Kissinger, Nixon, and a Forgotten Genocide, which is about 1971 genocide of indigenous Hindus by these Islamic supremacist colonizers, in which 3 million Bengali Hindus were killed in what is then East Pakistan, and 20 million were ethnically cleansed in neighboring West Bengal. and it's considered to be the second biggest genocide of the last 100 years. And there was also mass rapes of 200,000 up to 400,000 indigenous Hindu women and girls and trans people. And that's considered actually the biggest mass rape in history as well. So when you consider those numbers, it's shocking that this is a forgotten genocide. That's literally the subtitle of that book. And I wanted to do that book club because that genocide never really ended, and it's happening again on a big scale. And I wanted people to know that it's been happening at least as long as 1971, but actually it's been going on for 1,000 years. Hindus have faced the biggest, longest ongoing genocide in history. Another thing I'm doing is I'm collecting videos about the life of Mr. Man, that funny video. And I'm also doing a Zoom presentation to set the record straight about my own country, Myanmar, about Rohingya Hindus, because most people don't even know Rohingya Hindus exist, let alone what happened to them. The narrative in the West was that the Myanmar military was committing a genocide against Rohingya Muslims, and that the democratically elected civilian government and her leader were not speaking up enough about it against the genocide. And in fact, the democratically elected opposition leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, who is, by the way, Nobel Peace Prize winner, even said both sides are in the wrong, meaning both the Rohingya Muslims and the Myanmar military dictatorship. And some people, including Trevor Noah in the West, even equate her with Trump for saying that, because Trump said there are fine people on both sides, right? I mean, imagine comparing an indigenous woman who had been fighting a military dictatorship for 20 years, living in the house arrest, with a white male billionaire with cis privilege and all the other privileges, right? Complete opposite. And when you understand the truth, the whole truth, rather than just the lie information, you understand what she's saying. And she's totally right. And not the lie that they told is calling the Myanmar military a Buddhist nationalist army. No, they kill Buddhists too, and they kill Hindus too. They're anti-Buddhist, anti-Hindu, anti-indigenous, anti-everything. They're Marxists. They're not Buddhist nationalists. But by doing that, they're smearing Buddhists to look like they're genocidal people, right? What actually happened was Rohingya Muslims committed a genocide against Rohingya Hindus, and probably some Buddhists as well. And they killed the men and boys, raped the women and girls, forcefully converted them to Islam, trafficked them to Bangladesh. That's what happened. And in that whole thing, some, Myanmar military members were also caught in their whole crossfire. So Myanmar military being who they are, they're greedy, selfish, cruel oppressors. They retaliated and escalated disproportionately to the point that it did kind of become a genocide or ethnic cleansing. But they don't care if they're Muslim or Hindu, they only care that they're Rohingya. So they're actually genociding both Hindus and Muslims there. And so the Rohingya Hindus are caught in the middle between two genocidal forces, the genocidal Rohingya Muslims and the Myanmar military, who are Marxists. To the point that some of them have even changed their name from Rohingya to Chitanuga, to prevent being killed by the Myanmar military. So that when they come, they're like, oh, we're not Rohingya, we're Chitanuga, right? But by doing that, they're kind of also sadly end up erasing themselves, participating in their own erasure, right? On top of the erasure they already face from the Western media, especially the Western left. Yeah. So
Erasing their truth.
exactly. So I want to set the record straight on that. And by the way, that opposition leader, she didn't really have much power to actually stop it because, like I said, it's been a military dictatorship for decades. We have 10 years of this hybrid democracy of power sharing between civilian government and military. And in order to do the power sharing, even to do that, the military said they must have 25% of parliamentary seats no matter what. Basically 25% of power. And they said we must control 3 major government departments, including border control, which is where most of those atrocities happened. So she had no power to tell them to stop because that was literally part of the power sharing agreement. Right. And that's another thing that the Western left is talking about.
So all of this is going to be covered in your.
Yeah, that'll be covered, and then we'll go back and do some of the history and going back at least until I think I'll start from independence and then go forward. Yeah. So because a Burmese businessman also saved the United States from annihilation, nuclear annihilation. So that's another thing I want to let people know too. And also because Burmese people have the highest poverty rate in the United States and twice the national average, along with the Mongolians. So yeah. Where can we find more of you?
Instagram, Dr. Varun Gandhi. My website, drvarungandhi.com.
Okay.
2 best spots.
Yeah. Besides books, so you have their YouTube show coming up. You're going to redo that. Is there anything else you plan to do? Any courses? Any speeches you're giving?
So besides the podcast, these books, a couple more books that are coming out, and then I'm looking to put together events for next year. And so one will be at the beginning of the year, which is a festival. One will be towards the end of the year, probably a 2,000-3,000 person event at the end of the year, next year. So those are big projects that are coming up. And I'm also building a platform for event ticketing for indigenous events and cultural events in different communities. And so I'm working on that right now. And there's a big need for it in our community because the technology that exists in our community is kind of old school right now. And so we're looking to upgrade that and put together something around there. So I'm working on that as well over the next few months.
That's great. Yeah. As for me, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. On Facebook, it's just my name, Kundan Chhabra. Instagram is Kundan Chhabra. I also have 2 other accounts on Instagram, Clear Focus 7, and also Story for a Cause, which is teaching storytelling to and messaging strategy to climate justice activists. Because my country, Myanmar, is among the 5 countries most impacted by climate change and climate justice issues. So that's where you can find more of me. And thank you so much, Varun,
Thank you for having me.
for being here and doing the interview. And now you have your books in the bookstore now. Your first bookstore, right?
First bookstore.
Awesome, congrats.
Definitely come to our Vida bookstore, check it out. My books are going to be here somewhere on the shelf. And ask for Dancing with Kites.
Yeah, check out Avida Bookstore. All right, peace. Now, how do you click the X, right, for YouTube?
That's not.